Welcome to the State of Mind Virtual Speaker Series. This series has been developed to provide education and support to youth, caregivers, and educators during this challenging time. This series is a collaboration between two local nonprofits, 1 in 5 and MindPeace, and various community mental health partners. We're glad you're here to educate yourself and to learn how to keep your brain in a healthy state of mind.
Hello, and thank you for joining me today for this State of the Mind speaker series brought to you by 1 in 5 and MindPeace. My name is Marie Kahwaty-Bogan, and I'm from Companions on a Journey Grief Support Services. I'm also a school social worker. I'm going to be talking to you today about grief and loss during COVID-19 and discussing ways that we can prepare for our next steps. When the pandemic hit and we started social isolating, I remember thinking that there was already so much grief in the world with everything that was going on in China and in Europe, and then just anticipating what was going to happen here in the United States. Even as we began this process, there was so much grief and a sense of loss through changes that we were experiencing and that we now continue to experience. The pandemic has created a new yet unknown reality for our future. We're feeling so many different emotions: fear, anger, frustration, being overwhelmed, and just trying to make it through the day sometimes. We are moving through these emotions at rapid speed. We're in the midst of trying to manage all the uncertainty of everyday life, and we're also feeling a sense of grief. Not grief necessarily over death, but grief over loss. Loss of the sense of normalcy, as crazy as our normal may be. Loss over predictability and the feelings of certainty that we have each day. There were so many initial losses. Our loss of freedom, of regularly scheduled days. Our children were home with us. We had to quickly learn how to navigate new teaching platforms and learning styles. We're trying to help our families navigate the changes. Online schooling and finding a quiet place in the house was challenging. My house felt very small when everyone was there trying to work independently. I remember telling my husband that we just needed to move because there was just not enough space in the house. He thought I had lost my mind, and I probably did for that minute, but we figured it out, and I became more logical. Sometimes fear and fast-paced changes make us very reactive and illogical in our thinking. Our security and safety just felt so compromised at that point. I felt completely helpless. It was similar to the feelings that I had during 9/11. There was a new sense of fear that was established for me, a sense of helplessness that I think we all felt in this nation. The loss of life that day and the aftermath took us to new levels in a way that forever changed us. We came back better, stronger, and more united as a nation. What made the difference was that we found some meaning. We were a nation that came together. Meaning allowed us to find a new sense of hope and purpose. It redefined our place in the world and gave us a new sense of purpose. Meaning gave us a sense of control. It may have even inspired us to look beyond our boundaries and be part of something bigger than ourselves. Our lives and our hearts were forever changed that day and in the days that followed, just as they are now when the pandemic started. We talked about life before 9/11, and now we're going to talk about life before the pandemic and what that looked like. I remember when I first heard about social distancing on March 13th. I was at a seminar in Kentucky, and I thought, what's this going to look like? Before I tell you my experience, let me say that grief does not have a prescriptive plan, that it is not linear, that it is descriptive in the way that Elizabeth Kubler-Ross described it, that you go back and forth through all of the emotions or some of the emotions Everyone's grief is different. So here was my mindset on those days prior to the announcement. So I first started with denial, thinking that, in January when we heard about the coronavirus in China, I thought this was not going to be our issue, that it wouldn't get to the United States, and certainly not Butler County, Ohio, where I live. And then there came this feeling of anger. Like, what do you mean it's in Italy and it's coming here? I don't have to social distance. I can't go to work. My kids are going to be home with me all day for the next 3 weeks, because at that point, that's what they were saying. My feelings about my external locus of control kicked in, and I began to feel that loss of predictability. The sense that someone else had suddenly taken over my life and told me what to do and how to do it. Somewhere in all that, the fear kicked in. Do I have enough toilet paper? Will I have enough supplies to get us through? Could someone in my family get sick, and what would I do if I couldn't provide for them what they needed? Can I help my child with remote learning? How will I ever get my work done at home with children? What about my supports, my family, my dad who lives in New Jersey? I was just overwhelmed by it. And then I went to bargaining. And bargaining for me looked like this. Well, it's only 3 weeks if we wash our hands and we use enough soap and water and hand sanitizer and stay away from people through social distancing, wearing our mask, we'll be okay. I'll be okay, and everything will be fine. But then I went back to anger when they told me it was going to be another 4 weeks. I don't know if I can do this. It's getting closer to us. I hear the numbers each day. The media was just overwhelming, and I was really scared. At that point, though, sadness set in for me. We were missing so much. It's another 4 weeks, and that then brought us into graduations and proms and weddings and plans to look at colleges and spring break. And my daughter's graduation was going to be virtual at that point. She had worked so hard to get through college, and now we had to do this virtually. And it was just crazy for me. Then I went to acceptance. We'll figure this out, right? We're doing everything that we can to keep ourselves safe. I have resources within me and my family, and we will stay healthy, and we're going to be okay. We'll continue to take care of our minds, our bodies, and our souls, and we'll get through this together. And so at that point, I was kind of feeling like a little more in control of things. I was starting to get a routine together. I was figuring out how to do my job via Zoom and do some counseling with students who I was missing terribly at that point. We had been out of school, and I love my students. And so it was really hard to be away from them. But I felt like life was on hold. It had all been canceled. I understood why, but that didn't make the feelings go away. I was supposed to go visit my dad in New Jersey, and there was no way I was going to be able to do that because life was hitting us hard in New Jersey. And so then I found myself like doing more research and gaining a little more sense of control as I broke it down into smaller pieces and just tried to look at one thing at a time. I thought about it all. If I thought about it all at once, I became immobilized, and it was just not a good place for me. Since that time, I have heard so many people talk about health issues, and the grief of not being able to be with their loved ones, or even go to the hospital with them and nurture them. That feeling of helplessness is even more overwhelming when someone you love dies in the hospital and you couldn't be with them. And then the whole issue of funerals and not having closure. Memorials even to celebrate people's lives, that has all been put on hold. And that was so hard. Now, here's the hard part. I want you to think about your experience during that time. What was the hardest part for you? Nobody wants to think about that. I mean, it drains us. It makes us feel powerless, fearful, vulnerable, helpless. But just for a moment, I want you to look at this pandemic and think about how it has affected you, and not only you, but your family. I promise not to keep you in that rabbit hole very long, but we need to acknowledge where we were then and where we are now. So think about how your life has changed, the feelings that you experienced, the events you missed out on. Maybe you experienced some denial or fear, anger, bargaining, anxiety, depression, sadness, even a sense of isolation and loneliness, or some other feeling. What went on in your mind the day that you found out that we were going to be social isolating for 3 weeks? Maybe you thought that this was going to end in a few weeks, and then it didn't. And how did you feel at that moment? Think about all of those things that you were going through, all of the feelings that were going on for you. How did you feel that you wouldn't be returning to school for the rest of the year, that you wouldn't get to see these kids that you had such strong relationships with? I know it was as hard for me as it was for my students. What about the time between May to July, when you had to wait to find out what the plan was going to be for the future? How did that make you feel? The reason I'm asking you to go through this is because we have to acknowledge our feelings, and we have to keep in mind that we are carrying all that with us. How has your grief affected your mind, your body, and your soul? We have to first acknowledge those feelings and the grief in order to move through it. Do you remember what March 12th looked like, the day before we found out that we had to social isolate? Do you remember what it was like when they told you you had to get all your supplies that you were going to need for an unlimited period of time, and try to figure out how to navigate new learning platforms and teach children? We're living in a different world right now, and your mindset is different. Grief changes us, whether it's from death or from loss. We are forever changed by those experiences. Our personal grief is our greatest grief. Your child's personal grief is their greatest grief. Everyone's grief is so personal and different, and it is particularly difficult for them. No two people grieve the same way, and just as no two people experience life in the same way. Our perceptions and our experiences mold us. We never get over grief. We learn to work through it, and we learn to live it. We learn how to live with the losses or the changes in our life. And that's what it means when people say time heals. It's not the time that heals. It's the new way that we learn how to live without that person in our life. We need to acknowledge the grief, the weight of it, name it, and claim it. We're different now from the way we were 4 months ago. We wear masks to protect ourselves. We stay a distance apart from strangers, and we don't run up and embrace our friends like we used to when we saw them. We are very cautious. We're teaching virtually, which for some may have been a completely new experience in itself and brought on a whole new set of stressors. Our stress levels have taken a new toll on our body, the bodies that we need to keep healthy so that we don't become physically compromised. And it's such a balancing act for us at this point. Our cortisol levels tend to remain at a heightened state because of that fight-flight place that we're in. Some of us get to freeze sometimes, but most of us, I think, are in a fight-and-flight mentality right now, just trying to figure it out and trying to stay stable. We're waiting for the next outbreak. We're looking to the media for answers, remaining in a state of alert position. We are experiencing losses, and that is difficult. Feeling the losses not just from the death, but from life events we've missed out on. Losses of time with our loved ones. We are forever changed. We can never go back to the way it was before. It's like trying to put a piece of glass back together. It just will never be the same. We may never shake hands again. With strangers, we may never get to embrace a friend for fear of COVID until this all passes. We're going to do a lot more conscious hand washing. And masks have become our new makeup. We don't want to be infected, nor do we want to harm anyone else. So the isolation that you may have felt during this time is also real. We're in an age of hypervigilance, worried about ourselves and our loved ones and the students that we serve every day. We've been unable to companion with our loved ones who are sick or in nursing homes, unable to provide the love and the reassurance that came so naturally to us before. We're unable to attend the funerals and give support to the people in our lives that we love so much. All of these thoughts take us to a new level of grief, a place where we worry about the future and what it's going to look like. And while we need to anticipate short-term changes, short-term future in preparing for the next school year, in preparing for teaching, I encourage you not to look too far into the future. Don't perseverate on it. The future at this point is so unpredictable, and when we think about it, we'll always move to the worst case scenarios and bring up more stressors for us. It's just really a place that we don't want to go at this point. So now that we've acknowledged your grief and where you are today, let's talk about your students. Imagine that you are a child or a teen who has experienced the loss of a parent or a caregiver or a loved one during the pandemic or before. This pandemic triggers their grief to new heights. It may put them in a state of panic if their loved one died of an illness. It will bring up issues of safety for them and security, vulnerability and fear, especially if they're living in a one-parent family and they don't know what the plan would be if their parent got sick. Who would take care of them? Think about the feelings you had at this time and the increased vulnerability a child or a teen may have if they've experienced such a loss. Now, imagine what other losses the children that you work with may be experiencing. Has the pandemic maybe caused their parent to lose their job, and so now there are financial issues that they're worried about? Are the children that you work with old enough to support the family, and are they working a lot more hours just to try to make sure there's food on the table? Are they with their parent, or are they staying with someone else because their parent is struggling, maybe with a physical ailment or an addiction or a mental health issue? Is their safety being compromised? Are their basic needs being met? Do they have enough food? Is their shelter being compromised in some way? And are they living in a physically and emotionally abusive home that is now being further stressed by the pandemic? Are they living with emotional absence, where someone is not there to provide the love and support that they need for whatever reason? Are they struggling with their own mental health issues, or maybe learning disabilities as they try to navigate this new online learning? There are so many different scenarios we can imagine for each of the children that you work with this year. Our children are grieving so many things. They've lost their sense of safety and predictability in a day. Their structured days of having you with them has changed. At best, those children had supports in their homes and emotional resources to work through the online learning and have the support that they need in a loving home. In the best case scenarios, they easily navigated the new systems. Think about the children that you work with. How many of them do you believe made this transition easily? Did they have a computer or internet service? If they didn't have those, they couldn't even use the resources that they normally would have used, like going to the library or a community center to use a computer. And so what kind of stressors did something as simple as a computer or an internet access put on that family? What crisis did they experience trying to navigate through online learning? I know that as I ask you these questions, certain children come to mind and you're concerned. Maybe you even reached out to them, and you did this because you were connected to them. You are one of the biggest parts of their lives. You are such a major support system to them. Let's talk about what you as a teacher provide for them. You're not just someone who provides lessons and homework. You may be the anchor in their world. You may be the person who takes the time each day to acknowledge them, to give them a sense of belonging, to make them feel like they've mastered something. Maybe you're the person who builds them up, helps them with their sense of purpose, self-worth, and self-esteem. Maybe they're the difficult child in your classroom with whom you give of yourself even more. Maybe they need you more than ever as you provided patience to them each and every day and understood them. And even when you couldn't understand what they were going through or you didn't know what they were going through, you still gave of yourself. You gave that love and support. They knew what to expect from you each day. You were their stability. You were their structure. You were their strength. You have always been there for them. These children have lost their sense of connection to you during this time, and they've lost their sense of connection to their friends. And as we know, as children get older, friends become such an important part of their lives. They become their second family, sometimes even their first families. And so losing those connections to them is very difficult. When I was working with my high school students, and I talked to them about who they were connecting with, I found that they were not using the technology that we try so hard to get them off of. I found that they weren't texting as much, that maybe they weren't doing FaceTime as much, or Google Hangouts, or calling. I mean, we know that they generally don't call each other, but reaching out to their friends was something different. I was really surprised by this, and I think that they had just gone into such a state of disempowerment at that point that they just didn't know what to do. They always amaze me how resilient they are, though. And as we progressed through this and it became a little more normal, I found that they were doing more of the connectedness again, but I think those initial first few weeks were so difficult. Our children have lost so much in all of this. They've lost their celebrations of life. They've lost prom and graduation and the excitement of everything that goes with graduating. They don't know what the future holds. I think this week they now know what the future holds, but everything that they had gone through for the last 3 months had been so difficult. Kids who were supposed to go away to college didn't even know if they were going to start classes online or get to go to their dorm, or they're going to have to stay home. There was just so much indecision in the world, and I think that breeds fear, and it makes people feel very unstable and unsettled. There were so many special events that have been postponed or canceled. The normal experiences that fill your heart with joy, they were taken away, and they won't return in the same way ever again. What we knew about the future, the orderliness of each day, what would happen when we woke up and where we would go, it's all changed for us now. How we fit into this world, the safety for ourselves within the world has all changed. There is so much grief in this world right now due to loss. As we return to school, in whatever format is permissible. I know that there are several schools that have several tiers, and that we're going to start at the best case scenario, which is to go back to our classrooms 5 days a week and put our masks on and try to do this whole learning process with masks on. And hopefully that's as far as it'll go. But we're not sure. And again, even as we move towards this plan, everything can change. We have just so many unknowns going on. We need to look at how to help our students the first day they walk through those doors and kind of prepare them for what may be some changes that go on. In doing so, you as their teacher become their mentor for life, as you already are. And you are their home away from home. You provide a safe haven for them to learn about lessons, but you also teach them so much about life. Children whose minds and bodies and spirits have been struggling with emotions for months are not able to use their higher learning brain to think clearly, to integrate information and reason. And they're facing a whole new world as they walk into your classroom with a new school year starting and a new grade starting. And they've already been through so much. I bring this to your attention because I want you to really think about the fact that you may have some students who struggle initially, who had never struggled before. Be kind, be encouraging. I'm going to encourage you to create a world of safety and resilience. And I'm going to give you some tools to help do that. Let's talk about how you can help your students. They're feeling a lot right now, and it may come out as anger. Honestly, we can't change what happened in the past. We can't change what went on in their homes. We can't change the losses. We can, however, give ourselves and our students an opportunity to be present to our emotions and to move through them. Often when we are overwhelmed with emotions, we go to anger. And so one of the things that I do with my students who are so angry or tell me that they're so angry is I ask them to do this exercise with me. Frequently, when they are angry, there is an underlying emotion that's going on for them. I find that anger tends to be a secondary emotion. So when they come in my office and they're fueled with all of this anger that is starting the fire within them, I ask them to think about the experience. And I ask them to think about what was going on for you the minute, the second before you got angry? What were you feeling at that moment? Was it anger? Probably not. Think about what you were feeling. Were you sad? Were you frustrated? Were you disappointed? Were you scared? Were you feeling humiliated? Maybe you were feeling helpless. Maybe you were having another feeling. And I asked them to explore that with me. And the reason that I do that is because when they can identify what the true feeling is, they can work through it. There's a different sense of not having to feel like they have to protect themselves. Anger is a way that we put our emotions out there to protect ourselves. We're not vulnerable when we're angry. It gives us a sense of control and power. We don't feel helpless when we're angry. We feel so empowered. So when you are feeling all of those other emotions, you don't feel that empowerment. And that's very frightening, especially for a child who has had trauma or has been through so much already. So I would encourage you to maybe ask your child, this child that may be giving you a hard time, what is it that was going on for you the second before you got angry? And see if they can identify those feelings. It doesn't have to be a long, drawn-out process. They don't have to go to the social worker. They don't need long-term therapy for it. They just need to be able to identify what's going on. Obviously, if it continues to happen and it is a problem in your classroom, you'll need reinforcements. But that may be the one thing that you can do to give them a sense of understanding. We usually go to anger when we're scared. Another technique that I love to use is mindfulness. Mindfulness is being present to the present. It doesn't mean meditation and clearing your mind of all your thoughts. It's a concept of acceptance-based coping. The goal is not to change what is happening or to change our feelings about it. We can't change the past. Instead, what we want to change is how we relate the feelings and the uncontrollable events that triggered them. It's a way to become non-judgmentally aware of the flux of emotions that we're going through. And it's a way for us to kind of settle ourselves. It is so difficult to clear your mind. It's much easier to just be present in the moment. If you have a thought, you acknowledge that thought. You say, I have a thought. If you're having a feeling, then acknowledge it and feel it. It will help to bring you to a place of calm. It allows the feeling to come forth and push through, not be pushed down. When you push down your feelings, you only build up all of those bad feelings inside of you, and then you explode. In studies that I have read, mindfulness used successfully involves both experiencing our emotions and accepting them. Without the acceptance, focusing on the experiences doesn't help. So what we need to do is move past the experience and go right to the feeling. Now, I know that it's almost a cliche, but in fact, it does work. A suggestion that I have is to start each day with a moment of mindfulness in your classroom. There are several apps out there that you can use that are maybe 2 or 3 minute videos. You may just want to play some music each day and just have them settle down and get into that routine. You may want to use the same video each day or the same music each day, or you can change it up after a week, a day, a month. It's all up to you. You can even do this virtually. If you start your teaching lesson with a mindful moment, just ask them to close their eyes and to just breathe in. And what I do is I tell my students to breathe in for 4 and hold for 4. And then release for 4. And it helps them to center. If you're doing a Zoom meeting, start off your Zoom meeting that way. it has been so hard to find the meaning in the midst of all this, and acknowledging our feelings and allowing ourselves to be present in the moment, to be able to move through, is probably one of the best things that we can do for ourselves. One of the things that I will say to you first and foremost is to be kind to yourself. Don't judge and overwhelm yourself as you prepare for this new year and these new students. Think through your alternate plans now while you have the time, so that if your plans change, you're ready. The unknown brings up so many feelings, and scrambling to try to get things together in the wake of changes only brings about more stress. So while you have the time in July, I would encourage you to look at what your plans will be for maybe tier 1, 2, and 3. You have to put your oxygen mask on before you can help anyone else, just like when you get on a plane. So the best thing you can do for yourself and your students is to try to develop maybe a self-care plan. And what I would say to that is, it doesn't have to be elaborate. I do encourage you to look at some form of physical activity, whether it's walking or stretching, exercising, or whatever it is that gets you moving. Feelings need motion to release. So find something that helps you to release that emotion. My self-care is pretty simple. I spend a few minutes in the morning just in mindfulness. Just a few minutes. I wake up, I breathe in for 4, I hold for 4, and I release for 4. And I do that a few times. And then I get out of bed and I stretch. And not a long stretch, just to stretch your arms, stretch your legs, bend over, kind of get the blood flowing. It just feels like that's my minute, or that's my 5 minutes, to just kind of be present with me, maybe before the kids wake up, before the craziness of my day starts. It just allows me to be present to me. I also try to plan something fun to look forward to, not every day, but, I'm going to do something fun on the weekend, or I'm going to have something fun this evening. We're going to play a game. We're going to have a special meal, something. We're going to get out of the house. I do know that when I'm stressed, I love junk food. So I would encourage you to try to steer clear of that a little bit. Indulge in small levels of junk food. Try to eat healthy. Try to hydrate. Keep yourself hydrated as much as you can. It really does make a difference in our mental health processing. Something else that I would encourage you to do is to find something to appreciate about each day. If something as simple as, like, I didn't hit any lights on the way to work, or, when I walked in, it just felt so good to be there, or, my desk was straightened up, and that's a good way to start my day. Let go of what you can't change. There are so many things right now that we can't change. So I would encourage you to please let go of those things. They will happen soon enough. You will find your answers soon enough. Say no without guilt. You have to know when you're starting to get overwhelmed. And if you don't say no, then you are going to put yourself into a bad state of mind, and you're not going to be able to function at your optimal best. When I'm stressed, my favorite thing to do is music. So if it's a nighttime and I'm able to, my family and I just dance like crazy people. It sounds probably bizarre to some people, but music really helps to calm me, and dancing out that energy really helps. So you're making dinner and you're feeling really stressed, put some music on and just dance to it. It really is stress releasing. Try to look for opportunities to show kindness. It fills your heart, and it also fills someone else's heart. I know that you give out so much love and kindness to your students each day. Continue to do that. They need that from you. The other thing that I would say is to get outside. Do some gardening. Put your feet in the grass and just feel the ground underneath you. It's grounding, it's earthing. It's so healthy for us to breathe in that air even when it's humid, and just feel the earth beneath us. Sit outside and enjoy the fresh air. Look up at the stars. I encourage you to take mindfulness moments or quiet moments by yourself. Maybe journal your thoughts, not even full sentences, just release the day in a notebook or journal. Acknowledging your feelings, not to dissect a problem or to come up with a plan, just write down those feelings. It doesn't have to make sense. You never have to read it again. But I do find that if I'm having a hard time sleeping, I'll just put a notebook on the side of my bed, and when I wake up, I write the first things that come to mind. They're not full sentences. They're just thoughts. I put the book down, I close my eyes, and I can go back to sleep. That has been so helpful for me. I would also say that we have supports, and so you should call your friends, reach out to your loved ones, vent when you need to. Do Zoom meetings. We do Zoom meetings with my family all the time, and that helps to make me feel very connected to them, even though they're so far away. I would say the one thing that you need to do every day is to take those big, deep breaths in. Maybe putting an alarm on your phone for each hour and just take a cleansing breath. It's a really good classroom technique if you just have everyone breathe in for a minute and release. Your ability to care for yourself allows you to be better for you, for your family, and for your students. It will help to build resilience. The idea behind resilience is to acknowledge what we've been through and to allow our students to feel their feelings. Joan Rosenthal is someone that I had watched on YouTube, and she talks about the fact that our feelings come over us in waves, 60 to 90 seconds, and if we allow them, then they are able to move through us. If we push them down, they stay with us and they weigh us down. I would encourage you to watch her YouTube video. I also would encourage you to watch Brene Brown. She is very empowering. She does lots of TED Talks, and she talks about vulnerability, and she's just, in my mind, amazing. So in an effort to find meaning in all of this, let's acknowledge the kindnesses that we have found through the pandemic and some of the positivity that may have happened for us during this time. We can find meaning in having to slow down and spend more time with the people that we love, not running to all these practices. And while that's disappointing for our families from that sense, it also gave us an opportunity that we would have never taken otherwise. We had to slow down. We had to take those breaths because we weren't able to continue at the fast pace over obligated lives that we lead. Maybe you were able to get to know a neighbor and provide a kindness to them. Maybe you volunteered to help a cause. We've seen brave men and women. Our first responders work tirelessly. We've heard about kindnesses that filled our hearts. Maybe due to this pandemic, the world will be less focused on ourselves and more focused on community needs and the world as a whole. Just maybe we will be able to find meaning in the importance of human kindness. Maybe our souls got filled and our bodies and our minds were able to rest, and just maybe there is some meaning in all of this. As you enter the new school year, my hope for you is that you have been rejuvenated, that you have established some self-care plans and identified tools to help yourself and your students. Having these tools will allow you to feel better equipped to find meaning, love, resilience, and kindness. Thank you for spending this time with me. Please visit the 1 in 5 and Mind Peace websites for additional resources and the State of the Mind videos. Take care of you.
A special thank you to our State of Mind speakers and to you for joining us. More videos and educational resources can be found at 1 in 5's website. If you feel like you or your child is in need of professional support, therapists are available. Please refer to Mindpeace's school-based or community resource page. For a mental health crisis or emergencies, patients and families are encouraged to contact their current mental health provider first. This allows the mental health provider who knows your child best to provide support and direction. If your child does not have a mental health provider and they are experiencing a non-life-threatening mental health crisis, you are encouraged to contact the Psychiatric Intake Response Center at Cincinnati Children's Hospital Medical Center. 513-636-4124. Call 911 or go to the emergency department if you are experiencing a medical emergency, a life-threatening mental health crisis, or are directed to go there by a medical provider. This will help limit the spread of COVID-19 in our community and allow our emergency departments to care for patients with the most critical needs first.